I sat in that mahogany-paneled conference room, watching my brother and sister smile like they'd already won. The inheritance lawyer shuffled papers in front of us, and I noticed something that made my blood run cold. My name wasn't anywhere on those documents. Not a single mention. 28 years of being Dad's daughter, and I'd been erased like I never existed. But they didn't know what was coming. They had no idea that the final page would destroy everything they thought they knew. My name is Emma Richardson, and this is the story of how my family tried to rob me of everything my father built, and how one piece of paper changed everything. My dad, Robert Richardson, passed away 3 months before that meeting. Lung cancer. He fought it for 2 years, and I was there for every single appointment, every chemo session, every midnight rush to the emergency room. My brother Marcus? He visited twice. My sister Vanessa? She showed up for the funeral and complained about the catering. But let me back up. Let me tell you how we got here. I'm the middle child. Marcus is 2 years older, Vanessa 3 years younger. Growing up, Dad owned a successful commercial real estate business in Charlotte, North Carolina. Richardson Properties. He started it from nothing, built it into a portfolio worth over $12 million. Strip malls, office buildings, apartment complexes. The man was brilliant. Mom died when I was 16. Breast cancer. After that, something shifted in our family. Marcus, who'd always been Dad's golden boy, started to pull away. He moved to Miami, got into some tech startup that crashed and burned. Vanessa married a hedge fund manager named Brett and moved to Connecticut. They lived like they were already billionaires, spending money they didn't have. And me? I stayed. I went to UNC Chapel Hill, got my MBA, and came right back to work with Dad. For 10 years, I was his right hand. I learned every property, every tenant, every contract. I worked 16-hour days. I gave up relationships, friendships, my entire social life. Richardson Properties wasn't just my job, it was my life. Dad and I were close. Really close. We'd have breakfast together every Sunday. We'd talk about business, about life, about Mom. He told me stories about building the company, about the risks he took, about the people who doubted him. He told me I had his drive, his instincts. He told me I was the only one who truly understood what he'd built. So when he got diagnosed, there was never a question of who would be there. I moved into his house. I managed his care, his medications, his appointments. I held his hand when he couldn't sleep. I read to him when he was too weak to hold a book. And through it all, I kept Richardson Properties running. Every decision, every crisis, every opportunity, I handled it. Marcus called every few weeks. Vanessa sent flowers. 3 weeks before Dad died, something strange happened. Marcus suddenly showed up. Just appeared at the house one Tuesday morning, suitcase in hand, talking about how he needed to be there for Dad. Vanessa came 2 days later with Brett, and they checked into the Ritz-Carlton downtown but visited every day. I should have known something was wrong. They were never interested in Dad's health. They asked surface-level questions, spent 20 minutes in his room, then disappeared to make calls or grab lunch. But I noticed they were spending a lot of time with Dad's accountant, Edward Chin, and with Dad's primary care attorney, Richard Morrison. I asked Dad about it. He was lucid that day, sitting up in bed, looking out at the garden. "Emma," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't worry about your brother and sister. They're trying." "Trying what, Dad?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Trying to make up for lost time. Let them try." Something in his tone bothered me, but he was tired, and I didn't push. For days before he died, I came home from a meeting with our biggest tenant to find Marcus and Vanessa in Dad's study. The door was closed, but I could hear raised voices. When I opened it, they both jumped like they'd been caught stealing. "What's going on?" I asked. "Nothing," Vanessa said too quickly. "Just looking for some old family photos." "In Dad's filing cabinets?" Marcus stepped in front of me, his jaw tight. "Emma, we're allowed to be in our own father's house." "I know that." I'm just asking what you're doing in his private office, going through his files. Maybe if you weren't so controlling, we wouldn't have to sneak around, Vanessa snapped. I felt like I'd been slapped. Controlling? I've been taking care of him for 2 years while you two were. While we were what? Marcus moved closer. While we were living our lives. Not everyone wants to be Dad's little secretary, Emma. Some of us have ambitions beyond Charlotte, North Carolina. I left before I said something I'd regret. Dad died on a Thursday morning in April. I was holding his hand. Marcus and Vanessa were at the hotel. They made it to the house 20 minutes after he passed, and Vanessa cried dramatically while Marcus stood in the corner making phone calls. The funeral was massive. Dad knew everyone in Charlotte's business community. Over 500 people came. I gave the eulogy. I talked about his integrity, his work ethic, his love for our mother. I broke down twice. When I finished, I saw Marcus and Vanessa in the front row, dry-eyed, checking their phones. After the funeral, Richard Morrison, Dad's attorney, approached me. Emma, I need to schedule a formal reading of the will. All beneficiaries need to be present. Of course. When? I'm thinking 2 weeks. That'll give everyone time to process. Beneficiaries, I repeated. So it's the 3 of us? Something flickered across his face. We'll discuss everything at the reading. That should have been my first warning. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare. Marcus and Vanessa stayed in Charlotte. They were suddenly very interested in Richardson Properties. They showed up at the office, asking questions about revenue, about property values, about outstanding debts. They requested financial statements. They wanted access to bank accounts. Dad's estate hasn't been settled, I told them. Nothing's been distributed yet. We're his children, Marcus said coldly. We have a right to know what we're inheriting. What we're inheriting? I repeated. You haven't been involved in this business for over a decade. That's about to change, Vanessa said with a smile that made my skin crawl. I called Richard Morrison. What's going on? Why are they acting like they already own everything? There was a long pause. Emma, I can't discuss the specifics of the will until the official reading. But I will say, prepare yourself. Your father made some decisions in his final weeks that might be unexpected. My stomach dropped. What kind of decisions? I really can't say more. Just be at my office next Monday at 10 a.m. And Emma? Bring someone with you. A friend, a lawyer of your own, someone you trust. I couldn't sleep that night. Or the next. Or the next. I started going through Dad's papers, looking for anything that might explain what was happening. I found nothing. No updated will, no letters, no instructions. Just the usual business documents and personal files. But then I found something odd. In the bottom drawer of his desk, under a stack of old tax returns, was a sealed envelope. My name was on it in Dad's handwriting. The envelope was thick, like there were multiple pages inside. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened it. Inside was a letter. And a key. The letter said, Emma, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for what you're about to go through. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything before I died. But I need you to trust me. I need you to trust that I always saw you, always valued you, always knew who you were. The key opens my safety deposit box at First National Bank, box 447. Go there before the will reading. Understand everything first. Then you'll know why I did what I did. I love you, sweetheart. You were always the one who truly understood. Dad. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. I called the bank first thing the next morning. I had to provide the death certificate and my ID, but they let me access the box. The manager led me to a private room and brought out a long metal container. Inside were documents. Lots of documents. Bank statements showing wire transfers. Hundreds of thousands of dollars sent to Marcus over the past 5 years. Loan agreements where Dad had lent Vanessa and Brett over $800,000 to cover their lifestyle and Brett's failed investments. Text messages printed out, showing Marcus and Vanessa pressuring Dad for money, making vague threats about not being part of his life if he didn't help them. And then there was the recent stuff. Documents from 3 weeks before Dad died. A revised will, signed and notarized. But it wasn't the will Richard Morrison would be reading. This was different. This one left everything to me, the properties, the business, the accounts. Everything. There was a sticky note on it in Dad's handwriting. This is what I wanted. This is what's right. But they wouldn't stop. They wore me down when I was weak. They brought their lawyers. They made me sign something else. They think they won. Let them think it. The truth comes out on the final page. My brain was spinning. Dad had made 2 wills? They'd pressured him into changing it? And what did he mean by the final page? I spent the entire weekend going through every document, trying to understand. I made copies of everything. I barely ate. I barely slept. Monday morning came too fast. I drove to Richard Morrison's office in downtown Charlotte with my stomach in knots. I'd called my friend Jessica, who's a corporate attorney, and she agreed to come with me. Whatever happens, Jessica said as we walked in, don't react emotionally. Listen to everything. We'll figure it out. Marcus and Vanessa were already there, sitting in the conference room like they owned the place. Vanessa was wearing a designer dress that probably cost $5,000. Marcus had on a suit that looked fresh off a Milan runway. They both looked smug. Brett was there too, Vanessa's husband, sitting beside her with his arms crossed. Emma, Marcus said without warmth. You made it. Wouldn't miss it, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Richard Morrison entered, carrying a leather folder. Edward Chin, Dad's accountant, was with him. They both looked uncomfortable. Thank you all for coming, Richard said, sitting at the head of the table. I know this is difficult. Losing Robert he was a good man and a valued client. Can we just get to it? Brett said impatiently. Richard shot him a look but nodded. Of course. I'm going to read the will exactly as Robert drafted it. There will be time for questions afterward. He opened the folder and began. The first few pages were standard, paying off debts, funeral expenses, small bequests to charitable organizations Dad supported. Then came the properties. To my son, Marcus Richardson, I leave the Pineville Shopping Plaza, the Cornelius Office Complex, and the 3rd Street Apartments. Combined estimated value, $4.2 million. Marcus smiled. Vanessa squeezed his arm. My chest felt tight. To my daughter, Vanessa Richardson Hayes, I leave the South End Mixed-Use Development, the University Area Retail Center, and the Matthews Storage Facility. Combined estimated value, $4.1 million. Vanessa actually laughed with relief. Brett pumped his fist. I sat there frozen, my hands gripping the armrests of my chair. Richard continued. The remaining liquid assets, totaling approximately $700,000, will be divided equally between Marcus and Vanessa. And Emma? Jessica asked sharply. What about Emma? Richard's face was unreadable. To my daughter Emma Richardson, who has worked alongside me for the past 10 years, I leave. He paused. Flipped a page. My personal effects, my book collection, and my vintage watch collection. Combined estimated value, approximately $50,000. The room spun. $50,000. I'd given 10 years of my life. I'd been there every single day. I'd sacrificed everything. And I got watches and books. Vanessa didn't even try to hide her smile. I'm sorry, Emma. I really am. But Dad made his choice. This is insane, Jessica said, standing up. Robert Richardson would never. It's his will, Marcus interrupted. Legally binding. Signed and notarized. When was it signed? I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. Richard looked down. 3 weeks before Robert's death. Right when Marcus and Vanessa showed up. Right when they were sneaking around. Right when Dad was at his weakest. This isn't right, I whispered. I'm sorry, Emma, Richard said, and he actually looked sorry. I tried to talk to him about it. But he insisted. He said he wanted to give Marcus and Vanessa a chance to build something, and that you were already capable and would be fine. I felt tears burning my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of Marcus and Vanessa. Not in front of these people who'd stolen my father's legacy. Is that everything? Marcus asked, already standing up. Because Vanessa and I have a lot to discuss about our new properties. Actually, Richard said quietly, there's one more page. Everyone froze. What? Vanessa said. Richard flipped to the final page of the document. His expression changed. This is unusual. Robert added a final clause. A codicil, technically, but it's integrated into the will itself. What does it say? I asked, my heart suddenly pounding. Richard looked directly at me. And then he smiled. It says, to my beloved daughter Emma, who stood by me when others walked away, who built this business with me, who held my hand in my darkest hours, I leave the most important thing of all. What thing? Marcus demanded. You already divided everything. Richard continued reading. I leave Emma the Richardson Properties corporate entity itself, the parent company, all management rights, all decision-making authority, and all future revenue streams from every property listed in this will. The room went dead silent. What? Vanessa whispered. Richard kept reading, his voice stronger now. Marcus and Vanessa will own the individual properties as specified, but they will own them as tenants of the parent company. Emma will control all management agreements, all lease terms, all renovation approvals, and all sale decisions. Marcus and Vanessa will receive rental income from their properties, but only after management fees, maintenance costs, and corporate oversight expenses are deducted. These fees will be determined by Emma as CEO of Richardson Properties. Furthermore, if either Marcus or Vanessa attempts to sell their properties within 10 years, Emma has right of first refusal at a price determined by independent appraisal minus 20%. Additionally, this is bullshit, Marcus shouted, slamming his hand on the table. This can't be legal. Richard looked at him calmly. It's completely legal. Your father was very specific. He had me consult with 3 different estate attorneys to make sure it was ironclad. Keep reading, I said softly. Richard nodded. Additionally, I leave Emma all controlling shares of Richardson Properties Holdings, LLC, including all bank accounts, all business relationships, all contracts, and all proprietary systems. Marcus and Vanessa's properties will generate income, but Emma will build an empire. To my sons and daughter, who came to me in my final weeks, who suddenly cared about money more than their father, I leave you a choice. Work with your sister, who knows this business better than anyone, or sell your properties and walk away. To Emma, I leave you what you always wanted, not just wealth, but purpose, control, and the knowledge that I saw everything you did. I saw your sacrifice. I saw your dedication. I saw your love. You are the true inheritor of what I built. Make me proud, sweetheart. I know you will. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They poured down my face, but I didn't care. Vanessa looked like she'd been punched. He can't do this. We're his children too. You're his children who ignored him for years, Richard said coldly. I was there when he added this codicil. He was completely lucid. He told me exactly what you'd done, how you'd pressured him, how you'd manipulated him when he was weak, how you'd forced him to sign the first version of this will by threatening to cut him off completely. That's a lie, Marcus yelled. Is it? Richard pulled out another document. Because Robert recorded your conversations. 3 of them. Would you like me to play them? Marcus's face went white. I didn't think so. Richard turned to me. Emma, your father left very specific instructions for the transition. All the corporate documents are in order. The board of directors, which your father appointed last year, is expecting you. You have full authority as of today. Edward Chin finally spoke up. Emma, I've been managing Richardson Properties finances for 15 years. Your father told me last month what he was planning. The company is in excellent shape. Annual revenue across all properties is $2.8 million. After expenses and the distributions to Marcus and Vanessa's properties, you're looking at approximately $1.4 million in management fees and corporate income annually. Plus, you own the company itself, which is valued independently at approximately $6 million. I couldn't process the numbers. I could barely process anything. You manipulated him, Vanessa said, her voice shaking with rage. You poisoned him against us. You were always jealous. Jealous. The word came out sharper than I intended. I was there, Vanessa. Every single day. Where were you? Oh, right. Spending Dad's money in Connecticut while your husband ran through his investments. How dare you? I have the bank statements. I pulled out the folder I'd brought, the copies from the safety deposit box. Dad lent you $847,000 over the past 4 years. Marcus, he sent you $632,000. I have every wire transfer, every loan agreement, every text message where you asked for more. Marcus stood up. You had no right to go through his private. He left me a key. He wanted me to see the truth before I came here. I looked at Richard. Dad knew they'd pressure him. He knew they'd force him to change the will. So he built in the final page. The part they never bothered to read because they were so excited about getting property deeds. This is unbelievable, Brett muttered. We're going to sue. We're going to fight this. Be my guest, Richard said. Robert Richardson's will is airtight. I guarantee it. And if you try to contest it, there's a clause that revokes your inheritance entirely and transfers your properties to Emma. Your choice. The room fell silent again. Vanessa was crying now, mascara running down her face. Marcus looked like he wanted to flip the table. Brett was frantically typing on his phone, probably texting their lawyer. So what now? Marcus finally asked, his voice defeated. I took a deep breath. Now you decide. You can keep your properties, accept the management structure Dad set up, and we can try to work together as a family. You'll still make good income. The properties are valuable. Or you can sell them to me at the discounted rate and walk away. Work together? Vanessa laughed bitterly. You're going to make our lives hell. Admit it. I'm going to run Richardson Properties the way Dad taught me, I said. Professionally, ethically, and profitably. If you want to be part of that, I won't stop you. But I won't be manipulated, and I won't be disrespected. Not by you, not by anyone. Marcus grabbed his jacket. This isn't over. Yes, I said quietly, it is. They left. All 3 of them. Vanessa was sobbing. Brett was swearing under his breath. Marcus slammed the door so hard the paintings on the wall shook. When they were gone, I finally let myself collapse into the chair. Jessica put her hand on my shoulder. Holy shit. Richard was smiling. Your father was a brilliant man, Emma. He knew exactly what would happen. He told me, they'll never read the whole thing. They'll be too excited about the properties to pay attention to the corporate structure. He was right. Why didn't he just leave me everything directly? I asked. Because he wanted to give them a chance. He wanted to believe they'd change, that they'd work with you. But he also wanted to protect you, to make sure that no matter what they did, you'd have control over what he built. It was his way of being fair while also being honest about who you are versus who they are. Edward Chin nodded. Your father spent the last month of his life planning this, Emma. He was weak, but his mind was sharp. He knew they'd manipulated him into that first version of the will. So he let them think they'd won. And then he added the final page. I looked down at the document, at my father's signature at the bottom, slightly shaky but unmistakably his. He'd protected me. Even in death. Even when he was at his weakest. He'd seen me. It's been 6 months since that meeting. 6 months since the final page changed everything. Marcus and Vanessa kept their properties. They didn't have much choice. They needed the income, especially Vanessa and Brett, who were apparently in serious debt. But our relationship is complicated. We're not close. We probably never will be. But we're professional. We have quarterly meetings. We discuss the properties, the tenants, the markets. They resent me. I can see it in their eyes every time we meet. But they also respect me in a way they never did before. Because I'm good at this. Really good. Richardson Properties has grown 23% in 6 months under my leadership. I've acquired 2 new properties, restructured our tenant agreements, and increased overall profitability. I hired a full management team. I promoted loyal employees. I built something Dad would be proud of. I still have breakfast every Sunday, but now it's at Dad's grave. I bring coffee, his favorite, black with 2 sugars, and I tell him about the business, about the deals I've closed, about the challenges I'm facing. I tell him about Marcus and Vanessa, about how they're slowly becoming better versions of themselves, whether they want to or not. I tell him I understand why he did what he did. He gave them properties, wealth, security, a foundation. But he gave me something more valuable: purpose, control, legacy. He gave them assets. He gave me his life's work. I found another letter in his safety deposit box a few weeks after the will reading. It was short. Emma, they wanted money. You wanted meaning. I gave everyone what they truly desired. Build something extraordinary, sweetheart. Show them what real inheritance looks like. Dad. So that's what I'm doing. Richardson Properties isn't just a company anymore. It's my father's legacy, yes, but it's also becoming mine. I'm expanding into sustainable development. I'm creating affordable housing initiatives. I'm building something that will outlast all of us. Marcus called me last week. We had an actual conversation, not just business talk. He apologized. Not for everything, but for some things. He said he'd been wrong about a lot. He said watching me run the company made him realize how much work it actually took, how much I'd done all those years. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was something. Vanessa still barely speaks to me, but she sent me a Christmas card. It said, "Thank you for managing the properties well." It wasn't warm, but it was acknowledgement. Progress. The final page of Dad's will didn't just give me control of a company. It gave me justice. It gave me validation. It gave me proof that my father saw everything I did, every sacrifice I made, every moment I showed up when others walked away. They thought they'd won when they heard their property names read aloud. They thought they'd manipulated a dying man into giving them everything. But Dad had the last word. And that word was written on the final page. Sometimes the people who love you most protect you in ways you never see coming. Sometimes justice isn't immediate, it's strategic. And sometimes, the final page is the only page that really matters. If you've ever felt overlooked, undervalued, or erased by the people who should have seen you, I understand. But I also want you to know, the people who truly matter, the people who truly love you, they see you. They always see you. And one day, when it matters most, they'll make sure everyone else sees you too. My father taught me that. Not with words, but with a will. With a codicil. With a final page that changed everything. I hope he's proud. I think he is. If this story resonated with you, if you've experienced family betrayal or fought to prove your worth, leave a comment below. Share your story. You're not alone. And if you want more stories about justice, karma, and the moments when everything changes, subscribe to this channel. I'll see you in the next one.